Thank you so much, Mike. All righty, sharing screen and hopefully going to presenter mode. All right, can you guys see the presenter mode?
Yeah, we can see all of your slides on the left.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Michael, for that more than generous introduction. And yes, I am not Sarah Dugan. So let's just be clear on that. And I just want to say an awe to Jamie, and I think that's your daughter. Yes. How cute. It's great to see everybody, a lot of familiar faces, and I won't name everyone, but it's just great to see you all. Today, I am going to talk about OhioRISE and care coordination, and in a sense, really kind of where we're at and where we're going. Many of you know what the system of care philosophy is, but I just put it on here as a nice, gentle reminder that, in fact, we're just trying to do a comprehensive spectrum of effective services.
Hey, Rick, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm not doing it on purpose. If you're talking about system of care, that's not the slide that we're seeing.
Well, then.
We're seeing the what is a CME.
Okay. Rick, you're not in presenter mode. You're not in the slideshow mode. We were seeing it like you were working on your PowerPoint.
Well, you know, I don't want to be corrected by Marjorie and Mike, so I'm not sure. Hey, Kara, do you have the PowerPoint that you could share?
Jamie, I think Jamie's on it.
Okay.
I love you, Rick. I don't know about Mike, but I love you, so
All right,
you're good.
I mean, I love you too. But really, public criticism, really? I mean, thank you.
There we go.
Yeah, I had this problem one other time on Zoom, and I got to figure it out. I think it's how I've arranged my screens. But thanks, Mike, for being my co-pilot. And I don't love you. Just so we have that on record. So system of care is organized into a coordinated network of services and supports. And that's the critical part of what I want to talk about today. If you could just jump to the next slide, Jamie, I would appreciate that. In some of these slides you have seen before, but what are the benefits of care coordination in child and family teaming? You know, as we think about our history in Ohio of doing service coordination and high fidelity wraparound through our local family councils, and now also through our new OhioRISE initiative and in the care coordination component that goes along with it. These are some of the things that we're looking to accomplish. So benefits of care coordination and child family teaming, in my experience, has been, it's a way for us to share burden and risk. So when we're working with youth and families who have multiple needs and challenges, how do we share the burden of helping that family? How do we share ownership for youth in our communities instead of it's your youth or somebody else's youth? It's shared action, shared accountability. So well-run child and family team meetings have this feeling of shared action and shared accountability. Also, shared resources brings people together that may have something different to offer than your system can provide. I think it serves the purpose of decreasing system confusion. So if we're all in the same room together, we can clarify any kind of communication that might have gone astray. It helps us develop connections and partnership. It helps to generate out-of-the-box solutions to complex situations. And obviously it elevates the youth and family voice. Is I've always said it's a way of leveling the playing field for youth and families. Next slide. So when we start talking now about intensive care coordination, moderate care coordination, I'm going to focus on those words today because OhioRISE is around the corner. We want everyone to know that these, the plans that come along with ICC and MCC don't replace plans that you have in your own system that are requirements in your own system. In child welfare or probation, etc. So each system has specific roles, responsibilities, and mandates. And ICC and MCC honor those mandates of other systems. ICC and MCC child and family teaming process is not intended to replace or override the role of any one of these systems, but instead should support and enhance them. All right, next slide. All right, some caveats around care coordination. Some things that I've learned over the years is the more people you have involved in a child's life, the more complex the dynamics become, and the more you need to coordinate care. Care coordination is enhanced with full participation of our cross-system partners, so we need everyone to help and participate. And care coordination is only as good as the service and supports that are available in that community. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to jump into OhioRISE here. So I am going to assume many of you have seen these slides in some iteration. So I'm going to go over them, some of them fairly, quickly, but this is the new and enhanced services that are available in OhioRISE. And what you see here are you have all the existing behavioral health services. You also have unique waiver services that will be included in the 1915C waiver for behavioral health. And that waiver is for youth who are financially not eligible for Medicaid, but would qualify for OhioRISE based on a CANS assessment. Mobile response stabilization will be available inside OhioRISE and also outside of OhioRISE. So if a child is on Medicaid and has a different MCO and doesn't have OhioRISE, they would still be eligible for MRSS. Folks that don't get Medicaid, aren't eligible for Medicaid, will also be eligible to receive MRSS, and the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services is currently working to avail the boards of some additional funding dollars to support making sure that MRSS is universally available to folks. You will also, in OhioRISE, get either limited care coordination, moderate care coordination, or intensive care coordination. Intensive home-based treatment now will only be available for payment in Medicaid anyway, through the OhioRISE program. And that includes MST and FFT is included in the umbrella of intensive home-based treatment services. One of the additional new home-based services that we're going to have is a teamed approach, where we will have a clinician and either a QBHS, qualified behavioral health specialist, and or parent or youth peer as a team member. And we're trying to expand IHBT into places where there's service deserts, if you will. In other words, in some of our rural counties, we don't have as much of the services that we would like. Eventually, we'll have psychiatric residential treatment facility. That'll probably be sometime next year. And then we also have 1915B services and other waiver services for behavioral health respite and wraparound supports. Next slide. Real briefly, a care management entity is a community-based organization that serves as the locus of accountability in a region. So we have 20 care management entities regionally throughout Ohio. Their responsibility will be care coordination and providing wraparound driven care coordination services to OhioRISE enrollees. They're also responsible for developing community resources and growing systems of care in their catchment areas. What are those catchment areas, you ask? Well, I'll show you on the next slide. Take out your magnifying glass, and here it is. 20, count them 20 CMEs in these particular areas. And in this slide, which will be made available to you, the whole PowerPoint, are the providers that have taken on the responsibility of being a CME and the counties in which they serve. Each CME will serve anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000 kiddos, I think, at a time. We're looking to serve 50 to 60,000 youth in OhioRISE once we get up and started. OhioRISE begins on July 1st. Many of you are experiencing that anxiety, that pressure that is going underway, that happens when you stand up such a big initiative. At the start of OhioRISE, about, I'd say, 5,000-ish kiddos will be transferred to directly transferred to OhioRISE benefit. It's a benefit, think of it that way, where you also get additional services with that benefit. Next slide. Care coordination is guided by high fidelity wraparound principles. These next two slides are really what I came to talk about today. And it's really, let's just discuss care coordination and what they are. So you can see there's 3 levels. The limited care coordination is what will be delivered by Aetna, okay, who is the OhioRISE benefit manager. And they will have a caseload. These limited care coordination folks will have a caseload of 1 to 63 youth and families. So it'll be very limited. And that'll be the lowest level of care coordination. Moderate care coordination is that second level. And that will be a care coordination level of 1 to 25. And then the most intensive tier, tier 3, is 1 to 10. So you can see that there's smaller and smaller service loads for each of these tiers of care coordination. The next slide will go into more detail. Next slide will go into more detail. Thank you. So what's the difference, you ask, between intensive care coordination and moderate care coordination? So the difference, it's very subtle, right? And we often talk about what's the difference between high fidelity wraparound and service coordination. It's very subtle, right? There's a lot of overlap between the two. However, we have spent a lot of time really differentiating in this definition. So when we think about intensive care coordination, we're thinking about care coordination that's delivered utilizing a high fidelity wraparound approach. We also have some county FCFCs that also use a high fidelity wraparound approach. We want to give credit where credit is due. Those folks will be serving significant behavioral health, youth with significant behavioral health challenges. There's a greater intensity and frequency of planning and monitoring. All right. Again, remember that care coordination, just like high fidelity wraparound, is a planning process. It's not a service per se. One of the quality differences is that it really focuses on plan innovation. Often you might hear the words, if you don't know what to do, then do wraparound. In other words, whatever you've been doing hasn't worked, and we need to think way outside of the box, create innovative plans, we need to customize services and supports or create new services and supports for families to be successful, okay? And there's a more in-depth and ongoing needs identification that goes along with this. With moderate care coordination, as you can see, they're using a wraparound informed approach. It's slightly different. I think moderate care coordination and service coordination, those kind of concepts are fairly similar. Moderate behavioral health challenges, moderate level of frequency and planning. And it's really around the idea of coordinating the existing services and supports that do exist for that youth and family. It's organizing, sequencing, maybe even titrating volume and intensity. It addresses things like duplication of services and supports. So maybe a family doesn't need all of that stuff that they're currently receiving. It's about plan integration. It's about connection and linkage. And the summary would be, is the youth and family receiving the right service in the right amount at the right time? And again, you can see there's overlap between these two, but these are the distinctions that we think are important to make. Next slide. ICC and MCC staffing requirements. I just went over these, but I just want to point out there's a slide that details them. And these next two slides get into detail around the frequency that intensive care coordination and moderate care coordination are asked to provide and the timeframes in which they're asked to provide them. And so if you just go to there's not a lot of difference other than the initial face-to-face contact for ICC has to be done in 2 days. For MCC, it's in 7 days. Convening and facilitating child and family teams for ICC is 30 days, every 30, and then for MCC, it's every 60. Next slide. By the way, I want you to check out Emily Murphy's, little cube there, because whatever she's doing, she's having a good time, having fun on her conversation. This is really kind of fun monitoring everybody, fitting the pieces together. And later, after this is all done, Neomed is going to share with Emily that I said that thing, and there will be curse words, I think. So fitting the pieces together, how does this all work? Well, everybody's getting trained on the CANS. The CANS is really that enrollment eligibility tool that we're using after day one to get folks into OhioRISE. You can also see you can get into OhioRISE once inpatient PRTF is begun. That would be an automatic inclusion into OhioRISE. And kids on the 1915C waiver, once they get into that waiver, are an automatic inclusion. I just summarized the care coordination and the care management entity kind of portion. It's that care coordination of all the services and supports that a youth gets. And then it's the services and supports is in that very right side of this slide, all the new enhanced, all the natural kind of supports. Thank you so much that was great, Jamie. A nice technique there. Saw a little arrow pointer there going to that. One of the things I do want to point out, there are additional benefits with care with OhioRISE. So one of the benefits is if you're in receiving care coordination, you will get additional dollars to support the plan. You can apply for dollars to support the plan. So if for the kids who aren't on the 1915C waiver, each kiddo could get up to about $1,000 to support the wraparound plan. If you're a 1915C kiddo, you would get up to $1,500 to support that. There's additional respite things that are available. So this was a way of Medicaid of building systems of care for kids through Medicaid modalities, if you will, to fund it and to take it statewide. Next slide. All right. So, as I was sharing with Kayla earlier, I used to work at an FC. I used to provide service coordination. I am a big fan of local family councils and what they can do and how they represent communities and how there is a sense of community, but a sense of ownership of all of our kids together and coming together to do that. And I think that's a core quality that we don't want to lose. We want to emphasize that we value that. And we want to continue to come up with creative ways of FCFCs to partner with OhioRISE CMEs, because we recognize that the FCFCs have the expertise of their communities, the knowledge of their communities, the relationships in their communities. And we want to make sure that that can also benefit the CMEs and vice versa. So how does it work together? FCFCs may provide services to kids and families who aren't enrolled in OhioRISE, so that's going to continue. Not every child will enroll in OhioRISE, and some will continue to need FCFC service and supports. For kids who might benefit from OhioRISE, FCFC should refer to Kansas assessors to help determine OhioRISE eligibility, must make referrals to CMEs to conduct. If you have a kid who doesn't qualify for Medicaid eligibility, then you want to refer to the CMEs so they can conduct a 1915C waiver eligibility assessment on them. Next slide. FCFCs may provide services to kids and families who are enrolled. I think this is a repeat slide. Okay, no, it isn't. Now go back. I think we're good. FCFCs may choose to develop contractual relationships to share information, leverage FCFC staff as Kansas assessors and or care coordinators. If FCFCs contract with CMEs and FCFCs staff meet requirements to provide ICC and MCC, they can provide those care coordination services through the CME. And the main reason for all of that language is basically it's a Medicaid reimbursable service that has to be delivered and reimbursed through an agency that's Medicaid eligible, but that can be subcontracted out. Some OhioRISE enrollees may be involved with local FCFC service coordination prior to enrollment in OhioRISE. When transitioning into OhioRISE care coordination, the care coordinators from OhioRISE plan and CMEs must work to collaborate with the FCFC on transition if desired by the youth and caregiver. Ongoing collaboration could include inclusion of FCFC folks at the OhioRISE child family team. Next slide. Here's a critical point. So you think their caregivers may choose to not participate in OhioRISE care coordination. So again, think of OhioRISE as a benefit, a Medicaid MCO benefit. Once you're in, that's your benefit package, okay? But you can choose not to have limited, moderate, or intensive care coordination. You can choose to get FCFC, you can choose to continue with FCFC, right? You would still get the other benefits in OhioRISE. So I just want to point that out to you guys so that that's pretty clear. And give me 1 second. I have something blocking my screen. All right. And if the youth chooses, all right, fine. That's all I wanted to say. You'd be assigned, the family would be assigned a limited care coordinator just to monitor, but not to plan, okay? So if in fact FCFC service coordinator says, hey, we're meeting with the child family team and we identified this as a need, they can go back to OhioRISE, that limited care coordinator, and say, hey, this was identified in the plan. Is there a way that you can support this? Next slide. And this is my last slide. I just want to point out that MSY program and funds continue for FCFCs. There's really no change in that, to my knowledge. But the other change is that children and youth not served by FCFCs who are involved in OhioRISE may also be able to now access MSY program funds, etc. Okay. I know I covered a lot in a very little bit of time. I'm quite sure you guys have a boatload of questions. This is where I torture you.